Well, that felt pretty good, fellas. Welcome into the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, and Jordan Schultz here with you. We'll talk with Anthony Newman, Andy Dirt Johnson, and possibly one Dusty Hara as well. But fellas, the number 9 Ducks march into Corvallis, and they put a whooping on the Beavers, 49-14 the final. The offense was humming. I think a lot of questions were answered today about a lot of the concerns we'd had over the last 2 weeks. But, Will, as we get things started here, just initial reactions from such a big win in what seemed like a game with pretty big stakes.
Wait. Sorry, should I turn that off? I heard that all day. F you, Beavers fans. Sorry, Will, continue.
No, it's fine. You finally got your O-line right. And I know that Matthew Bedford is still working his way back. I know that he took some snaps with the 2 in the work through, but the move in about the end of the second quarter, beginning of the third quarter last week of Poncho moving over to center and putting Strother at right guard has made a big difference. You can tell Dylan Gabriel felt comfortable in the pocket, but the most important thing that happened in this game was that you got the ground game established early. You averaged 7.5 yards per carry. Jordan James was gashing this Oregon State defense, and you moved up and down the field, and then that allowed you to be on time, so Dylan Gabriel didn't have to make a big third and long throw. He's making a third and manageable throw, and wide receivers caught the ball. It just looked like finally the offense has figured it out, and it was all because you made that move to put Poncho at center.
Schultz, what was so cathartic about this game for you?
I mean, it looked like it was supposed to.
Yeah.
It was nice from start to finish to feel like for the first time all season, Oregon was actually in control. It's what's going to need to happen when they get into Big Ten play. And this was. I saw, I'm not trying to knock Oregon State here. Like, they are a good team, and their running attack is something, to, you got to prep for. And after the Gianti performance last week, I think a lot of people wondered if OSU was going to run all over them again and just see the Ducks defense kind of falter in that regard for 2 weeks in a row, but they didn't. So nice to see the Ducks strong against the run, against such a strong running team, and for the game to look like it should.
Yeah, we'll have some time to nitpick later, but I think that, Will talks about this a lot, and Schultz, you referenced it too, but it looked the way it was supposed to look today. It finally felt like a game where, to a man, you looked physically dominant. You got to kind of play some of that bully ball. It felt like you were leaning on them for giant pickups on first and second down. Jerry referenced a stat during the broadcast that made me snap my head and think twice. They only had 6 third down attempts all day on offense because they were so efficient on first and second down. I mean, the Beavers had 15. So like the fact that you put up 49 points, 546 yards, and you only saw third down 6 times, you're doing everything you want to do on offense, and you look at the box score and the way that the ball was distributed, you had contributions from your running backs, from your quarterback with both his legs and his arm, from multiple receivers, from a tight end, really the entire offense, and you mentioned it, we'll get into it in its own segment later, the O-line totally bounced back, but the skill position players, when the O-line plays like that, it's just an embarrassment of riches.
Well, it makes it easy for everyone because what we saw a lot of Jordan James early on, right? It's like, why does he keep getting tackled by his shoelaces?
Yeah.
Well, the offensive line was actually getting to linebackers, and those linebackers were the ones that were tripping Jordan James up. Well, now Jordan James has a full head of steam running at a safety, and he's going to win that matchup every time, and he's going to fall forward. And then offensively, Dylan Gabriel, for the first time in 3 weeks, he looked comfortable. The other thing that we have to remember about Dylan Gabriel, because I was harping on him last week for not looking to the right side of the field. It felt like his eyes got glued onto the left side, and he didn't go through all of his progressions. He is a lefty, remember, so it's easier for him to look left as opposed to right compared to normal quarterbacks. But it felt like he's getting more and more comfortable in the offense as a whole. He wasn't afraid to go through all of his progressions, the first, second, third read, and making sure that he was delivering a ball on time and on target. It felt like in the first 2 weeks, it's almost 1 read, 2 read, get the ball out of my hand. One, because he was afraid of getting sacked and getting hit, but also because he didn't want to mess up and make a big mistake.
Yeah, see an open option, take an open option.
Right. It felt like he finally trusted himself to make the correct play. And really, we forget about having to go through this because you had Bo Nix, who had been at Oregon the year before, so he really didn't have to go through all that learning curve that Dylan Gabriel has to go to.
Sure. Well, Let me backtrack here. Dylan Gabriel has been sensational so far this season. And you think about a couple of the passes that he hasn't connected on that could have been touchdowns as well, especially against Boise. But I shared this with you before we got on the air, and I had to run the numbers myself. But Dylan Gabriel went 20 of 24 today, and his season completion percentage went down by 0.3 percentage points. He was 84.3% going in, and after an 80% day, he goes down to 84.0.
Didn't his first incompletion come like in the third quarter?
Something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the other stat that really stood out to me, again, emblematic of something we'll dive way deeper into later, is the O-line was not allowing any hurries, any pressures, and they weren't getting penalized for anything. They played a super clean game, and I think that could be said across the board. The whole team only had 3 penalties. One of them, as Dusty referenced, probably shouldn't have been when you had a helmet hitting the quarterback's elbow and not a roughing.
Yeah, it wasn't a roughing the passer call. I understand.
Really, you're down to 2 penalties if you take that one away.
Right, and I understand why they called that penalty. What I don't understand is it was called a roughing the passer penalty, and Jeff Schwartz was going off on this on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, but he was called for a roughing the passer because of the targeting. You go through the review and you realize, hey, that isn't targeting, so shouldn't the roughing the passer penalty go away? That'll be something that'll always be very confusing to me. But I felt like the defense played a sound game. Obviously, Oregon State ran the ball well at the beginning. I felt like Oregon State's offensive linemen were able to get to the linebackers of Oregon, and they were able to do that because they were moving the D-line early in double teams. This was the first game where I didn't really feel like Derek Harmon was just a wrecking ball the entire time. It almost felt like it took him and Birch and Tuioti a little bit to get going. And that's why you saw Bryce Betcher making a lot of tackles early.
Yeah, he was everywhere.
And it's because he was able to either get off blocks or he was the free man while they were eating up double teams. The problem with the linebacker making the tackle is linebackers make tackles. D-linemen make tackles for a loss. So once you got the D-line finally getting off those blocks and getting after the Oregon State running game, and once you got Oregon State off of timing, once Oregon State wasn't, 2nd and 6, 3rd and 3, once Oregon State had to really put the ball back in McCoy's hands, that's when you saw this defense really start to feast and the lead in this game just widen and widen and widen.